We are getting into our first organ system, which is the skeletal system, which includes the bones, and we'll also cover the joints that connect those bones as we come to them. But for those bones, each of the 206 bones in your body are individual organs as defined by two or more tissue types joining together for a common function. So all these bones are working together to form the skeletal system. The functions of the system are the obvious ones of providing a framework for your entire body, and this framework, along with the muscular system, allows us to stand upright as terrestrial creatures. And I say that because octopuses move around plenty without a skeletal system, but they're like in the water. So besides these obvious function is bone's protective role, that is our skull and our vertebral column within which our brain and spinal cord sit, our rib cage protecting our heart and lungs, and our pelvic bones covering our internal reproductive organs. Less obvious functions is that bone is the location of our blood cell production in the red bone marrow of spongy bone. And the extracellular matrix can be tapped for critical minerals like calcium and phosphate as needed. So there's 206 bones, give or take a few, in the human body. Surely, you naively imagine, you will not have to know them all, but you actually will, and you'll be surprised and impressed with yourself by the end of this unit. So the main divisions of the skeletal system is the axial and appendicular divisions. The axial skeleton consists of your skull, your vertebral column, and your rib cage. Your appendicular skeleton consists of your upper and lower limbs and the pectoral and pelvic girdles they're attached to. So let's take a look at the bones you're going to have to learn. In the axial skeleton, there are 80 individual bones, 29 of which make up your skull and face. But some of these are what are called paired bones. That means there's a right and left bone of the same name. So this cuts the number down to 17. And there's 24 ribs and the sternum, and those have a left and right, so it's 13. And furthermore, you really don't have to know any more than a total of 4. And then there's the vertebral column with 26 bones. However, you really only have to differentiate between about 5 of them because they're broken down into different regions, and you don't have to differentiate between the individual ones of each region. So we've gotten down from 80 to 26 bones in the axial skeleton. In the appendicular skeleton, there's 126 bones, but every single one of these is a paired, so we're going to immediately gone down to 63. And I'm looking at those 3 big bones in the arms, as well as the scapula, which it attached to, and the same thing is going to be going on in the leg. So where are all those numbers coming from? They're coming from the 26 and 27 bones of the foot and hand. But there's an easy way that we're going to remember them, so it's really going to break down to about 13 bones that you have to remember over there. So in all, we've gone from 206 down to about 50 bones. But you could do this, no problem. Everyone is going to know every single bone name. So your first lab activities consist of just identifying all the bones of your body, all the individual skull and facial bones, the vertebrae, and then all your appendicular skeleton bones. Problem is, that's just the first lab activities because a lot of those bones are going to have features on it that you have to know as well. On every bone, there are distinct projections and distinct surfaces where tendons and ligaments attach to. There's joint surfaces, there's openings and passageways where blood vessels and nerves pass through, many of which are clinically important. There's also distinct regions of the bone, often referenced in these common injuries. So these are the kinds of things that are generally called bone features, many of which you'll be required to know. These terms and features are the subject of all the other labs given in this section. So you're going to want to refer to figure 1.12 in your Martini's text, which give examples of these elevations and projections, openings, processes, and the common names you're going to see associated with these. So when you see something called a styloid process or a mastoid process, you should be looking for a projection or bump. And if you're looking for something called a foramen magnum or a jugular foramen, you should be looking for a passageway or hole. So before we get into bones and features, here's a quick overview of the different types of bones we're going to encounter. This anatomical classification is based on their particular shape, and each particular shape is associated with a particular function, more or less. The most common bones found in the axial are the flat bones, like those of your skull, and irregular bones, which comprise the vertebrae. And your appendicular skeleton consists mostly of the long bones of your limbs. The long bones refer to the overall shape, so your femur is a long bone, but so are your metacarpals and phalanges. So these two major bone types are associated with particular functions. The flat and irregular shaped ones create a protected area for vital organs, whereas the long bones are suited for leverage and movement. The box-like bones of your hands and feet, the carpal and tarsal bones, are called short bones. There's another short bone called a sesamoid bone, and the only named one is your patella or your kneecap. But you could also have a bunch of sesamoid bones growing in between tendons and ligaments anywhere in your body. So you may have little kneecaps in your thumb. And despite the outward shape of all the bones we're going to see, every bone has a dense outer layer of compact bone that looks smooth and solid to the naked eye. And then internally we have a spongy bone with that honeycomb structure. In this network, the open spaces between the trabecula will be filled with red or yellow bone marrow. Red bone marrow is the site of blood cell production, whereas yellow bone marrow is fat storage. So all over your body, your bones are going to serve this other function. And next time, we're going to look at some strategies for learning all those bones as well as all those features. We'll see you next time.